When I first looked, or when Tom Morris approached me about giving a presentation on this subject, I thought, well, that seems pretty easy, relate the bond program to sustainability. Well, as I got a little bit more engaged into it, it started to explode because just of the multiple various perspectives associated with it. So with that, I'm just going to give you a real brief 101 what a bond program is, so that we're all kind of working together and have this common knowledge. If you already have this knowledge, please indulge me as I quickly go through it. A bond program is different from the normal budget of a city. Cities develop their budgets on a yearly basis. A bond program, on the other hand, is something that's developed by the city, but it's voted on by the citizens. At least the city of Dallas has one every 3 or 6 years. And it's based on not what happened now with the pothole, something that's just real current. It's based on a needs inventory, something you start developing for some time before having a bond program. It's projects that it's an infrastructure that's going to last at least 20 years. Again, doesn't pay for salaries, doesn't pay for everyday maintenance. Now, to kind of give you a perspective, when you have a bond program, at least the city of Dallas, it really just meets the immediate needs, what we call the priorities. This is just a real quick, what's unique to city of Dallas, different propositions. But if you look to your very right bottom portion, there's 10 billions worth of needs. And it keeps on growing. And even though we have bond programs, the needs far out distance what we're able to fund. So in 2012, November, we had an election. It was for $642 million. Give you a perspective, the previous one in 2006 was for $1.3 billion. So what did $642 million get us? We concentrated on 3 propositions. It was streets, drainage, and economic development. You'll notice voters were really favorable to this bond election. Normally, we have what I call cave people, citizens that are virtually against everything. And so they're always going to come out, they're always going to vote no for whatever it is. In this situation, I'm expecting about 20% to just vote no, but by far the majority did vote in favor of the 3 propositions. So now I'll give you a perspective about what $642 million means in terms of streets, in terms of right-of-way sustainability projects. Out of the $642 million, $260 million are just for streets. Let me now break this down a little bit. $22.2 million was for what we call complete streets. Those areas, those streets that are really targeted specifically for all sustainability in those concepts that we're going to talk about throughout this conference. 22.5 in trails, which is a huge element of that. Joint projects with county, with our partners, county and TxDOT, 22.5 million there, and 193 million of all sorts, from resurfacing to petitions, but there's always a smaller element, but we're always trying to inject an element of sustainability there as well. Real quickly, we're talking about 13 projects on complete streets, trails, there were 9, intergovernmental, there were 6, and then there was 2 large projects, West Dallas Gateway and Houston Street Viaduct. Large projects, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Houston Street Viaduct, if those that may not be familiar, that's where we're having the streetcar system go through. And then, of course, West Dallas Gateway, which is really combining 2 completely communities that are separated by a railroad track. Okay, let me get now to a little bit more of the meat of what this presentation is about. It's about sustainability. And as we go, and this is sustainability in our roadways. And as I move into that, there's many right-of-ways that are associated with any city and different components. I'm going to concentrate for this presentation on these three elements: streets, drainage, lighting, landscape. Now let me go into sustainability associated with streets. There's always a history. We always like to look at what we're doing as if it just occurred today. But there's a history behind this. And this is arguably a scale, historical time scale of what's happened throughout the years. But as I was looking at this and doing a little bit of review, notice again, early 1900s, it was mostly associated with moving vehicles. And then we started moving into the late 40s, maybe 50s, a little bit more of drainage associated with movement of vehicles. I love this picture in between. One of the common, and I'm not sure how many of you have heard this term, congestion is our friend. Well, congestion is our friend is associated with trying to reduce the amount of vehicle traffic. Well, congestion is our friend depends on who you ask, right? Because in this picture, this is pretty crowded, and this is not something we would be seeking. But as we go into the 60s, we start building up our freeways and ways to move traffic out. Come the 90s into 2000, we start talking about a little bit more of sustainability, and all of a sudden, we reminisce of how it used to be with congestion. I'm sure this is not what we have in mind, but it's just, and I don't know what the trends are going to fall to, but it's always important to think or look at our history of where we've been and where we're going. An important issue with sustainability is there's many terminologies, ways of describing it that are either the same, overlap, interchangeable: content sensitivity design, sustainable design, low impact design. The one at the very bottom is something that I had to argue with Tom Morris as we were putting this presentation together. I said, well, Tom, I think there's another element, because I look at sustainability. Remember, this is Rick Galceran. I look at sustainability as the way I would raise my children. As economically as possible, move them out, and it's done. Low maintenance. And so that's another element that when I think about sustainability that is part of the picture. So when we start talking about sustainability as what I would call those experts, maybe all of you here, those that are more involved, we start thinking in terms of, how does that accommodate? We're talking about multimodal use, vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle. We're also talking about multi-usage. It's not only about moving people and so on, but it's also about social interaction. We got benches, we got trash bins, we got places that we gather, we interchange them with bicycles and so on. So it means different things. We're also thinking about visually appealing. That's an important factor. And it's got to be safe. It's got to be safe for all the users. Again, my part, it's got to be minimum maintenance as well. Another aspect is drainage, very critical aspect. And when at least the City of Dallas looks at drainage and sustainable, we're thinking about three major factors. We're thinking about peak runoff, how do we minimize that? And we're talking through here as far as permeable pavement ideas, recessed gardens, retention areas. We're thinking about treatment of that stormwater. So we're talking about bioswales, vegetation retention ponds. And then we're also thinking about, well, geez, why do we just send it off someplace? Why don't we reuse it, capture it somehow, and irrigate our plants? And so there's many aspects to just the drainage alone. Now, the other aspect, at least part that I'm involved with, is, well, I can describe this to all of you. You guys have that knowledge in a way, you're the experts. But how do I describe it to others, to my wife's bridge club? in a way that they understand it. And so there, then I'm talking about, well, it accommodates all types of users. It's about walking, cycling. It improves our water quality. It improves the quality of life. Promotes mass transit. That's a term very relatable to the masses. Enhances visual appeal. Increases safety. So now let me take you back a few years. City of Dallas is being bombarded, our council people are being bombarded by so many people showing interest on what they were calling complete streets, sustainability. It became a big topic, especially the whole concept of complete streets. So we've been implementing our 2006 bond program. We get to the point where it's 2009. We start hearing this, and all of a sudden we have to kind of, and all we're going to do is resurface, put a new street, move on. This is the money we have. This is what we're doing. We're implementing the 2006 bond program, and all of a sudden we have to shift gears. Now we're talking about how do we convert those remaining projects we have into a complete street area. Again, we hadn't budgeted for this. We hadn't thought about it. We're going through a massive learning, implement, and what the heck, why is it taking so long to get this thing done? So shift gears, our consultants were awesome in helping us through that process. One of those projects was Greenville. Converted into complete streets. We're talking about street furniture, landscaping, traffic calming, indented parking. Traffic calming, remember I mentioned congestion is our friends. Well, that's a matter, it depends on who you ask. This is a term, I said, that I love this term, lane diet. I was thinking about, South Beach diet, but how creative to come up with these concepts and these ways of description. So as we looked into Greenville, we had, ADA deficiencies. Pedestrians were going in there, but were able to park in this indented parking, but had no way of really getting around. And then so when we completed these projects, we had permeable pavement. We had the benches, extra wide sidewalks. If you look at that, it looks inviting, not only to walk through, perhaps bike through. It makes you want to visit those businesses. It just changed that whole concept all around. What did that mean, though, in terms of what did we give up for that? Well, we gave up a couple of lanes. Those are significant impacts. It's the shift in the way we think, and there's consequences to that I'll describe a little bit later. Another project was Bishop Avenue. We added street furniture, landscaping, traffic calming, bike lanes. This is what that area kind of looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Now, if you think of yourself walking through there, definitely before, you don't feel very secure, very safe. All of a sudden, you wouldn't mind helping your daughter, in my case, my granddaughter, ride her bicycle along there. Very inviting. There's bike lanes, very visible, very safe. We had also a lot of great partners. We put in the slabs with our Mass Transit Authority. They put in a really nice accommodations of bench and shelter. Other projects had to do with economic development, Bear Street. And those are our finished products there. So we were able to not only revitalize neighborhoods, but encourage economic development, put in some art features. The Herbert Street project was a residential traffic calming project. This is what it looked like before. And so what's different now? Well, we've got those pocket parking areas, extra wide, medium. We reduced the area, so we were able, the amount of the lane width, so we were able to calm that traffic we were able to meet those requirements, but also we made it much more inviting, much more walkable, more vegetation, able to treat our stormwater. This other project is pretty interesting because it was through the use of a SMU graduate student, and they were working with Hewitt Zoller under their oversight, and he came up with a few ideas. We had deteriorated concrete and water ponding and a lot of potholes. And the concept that they came up with was really making the street a one-way, reducing it down significantly. You reduce the not only of course the volume, but the speed. You got a bioswale there, make it much more walkable, much more user-friendly, and have multi-users involved. Now, this is a really interesting project, Locust Street. And we had a street petition for the '06 bond program. Street petition means that the neighborhood petitions, they want the street improvement, but there's going to be an assessment associated with it. So meaning that the value, the extra value or increased value of the property they would have to pay for. And so this is one of those particular projects. But the main deal is in this street, and it's hard to tell, is it goes into a dead end. And so one of the big issues is how do you get those fire trucks to make that radius without going in reverse? We had a dead end water main. It's kind of hard to look at. And so the water quality in the end of that street was bad. We also had illegally parked vehicles, dump area. We had a lot of drug traffic in that area. It was just one of those bad dead ends that we can't get around through. Well, our consultant worked with us very closely. We reviewed a lot of the problems, and we came up with a way to maybe solve it, is to remove that dead end, increase or move that street right through to the other intersecting street. So we were able to bulldoze that house there, and then increase that street and make that connection. And if you look at it from before, this is not a place you would want to walk by. And now you look at it now, it's very open, very safe in its view, very encouraging to be a part of that street. You've increased multiple user and made that safe feeling. Elm Street is a project that is right now ongoing, at least in design, and that would include streets, furniture. Let me catch up here. Landscaping, rain gardens, permeable sidewalks, indented parking, narrowing of lanes. And as I mentioned before, it's really now in the early construction phase, and this is one of the elements that we put in there, decorative concrete pavers, again, to help with drainage. And I'm going to kind of skip through a lot of these. If you'd like to review those specifics, I encourage you to, maybe leave me your card and I can send the presentation to you. But in order to save a little bit of time here, I'm kind of skip through those. One of the interesting drawings that we have here is just the specifications associated with the rain gardens. The type of vegetation used according to those rain gardens, a little bit on the slopes, and how we were able to work with those peak flows. Again, I'll kind of briefly go through those. Now, when we come to the rain garden and a lot of the vegetation that we're putting in, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You've got multiple interests. You've got some people that like a lot of greenery, some others that like a lot of flower. But everything has an impact, and not everything works in all conditions. And so these are just some of the areas that we've kind of narrowed it down to that are good fits. So now let me go into an area that I think too few times we ever talk about, and those are some of the lessons learned. Now, I'm a little bit upset with Tom Morris right now because I asked him to add a bunch of more pictures of what I would call not disasters, but mistakes that have happened associated with our green or sustainable projects. So, but this is all he added. But let me go through this a little bit and at least visually or verbally describe some of the issues. You know, in the older days, we used to have a lot of brick pavers in intersections. And I know in every city that I've been to that did this, they start encountering problems because those brick pavers start popping out. And so they become really maintenance issues. This is one of the areas we have to resolve. Irrigation systems. Every time you put in landscape, guess what? You got to water it. You've got to maintain it. If it's trees, it's going to take some time. These last 2 years were really hard on our landscape. We lost a lot. And the public, our citizens, are very intolerant of the loss of their landscape, of their vegetation. And so we put in systems that would help the tree mature for maybe a year or two, but in this case, it wasn't enough. And so when we design those irrigation systems, they're not meant to be permanent. So those are some of the issues that we're still struggling with and learning from. Trash cans. Oh, I can't tell you how many council people say, we've got to have trash cans. And so who's going to pick and empty those trash cans? Well, every business will say, I will volunteer. 2 months later, the trash hasn't been picked up. Those are relationships that sound good, that sound great ways to promote, that maybe to a more rookie type of committee or of a group, say you might applaud, oh, you got business to cooperate. But it doesn't always work that way. And those are the lessons that we're working through. Parking. Everybody says, oh, bike lanes would be great. And when we discuss, well, we're going to have to probably eliminate your parking. Oh, no, we don't want bike lanes after all. And so we have to come up with other creative ways. It becomes complicated. So what are we looking for now in the 2012 bond program? Where are we going? We are much more careful as to how we look at the candidates for complete streets. How do they connect? How do they connect to our bike lanes? What are going to be the factors associated? Much of what I've just discussed with you. The businesses, and how are they going to be impacted? Our stakeholders. We learned so much. Again, a lot of our stakeholders were the ones that made us transform into becoming to complete streets. They got engaged kind of after. They're the ones that became educated and said, hey, by the way, I know you're almost done and ready to go with your project, but hold on. We'd like to have all these other elements. So we know we got to engage them earlier. Now, engaging them earlier, you're thinking we're all going to gather together and sing, Kumbaya, and everything's going to be great. Well, you got a very, very interest, even amongst the residents and what they want, the businesses. We had trails. Who doesn't want a trail nearby? In some areas, especially the older community, sorry guys, and me included, they felt unsafe. They felt like, well, we're going to have anybody walking near our house. We don't want them around there. And then we had the younger generation saying, what the heck? I want to ride my bike here. I want to use this for jogging. Just those varying interests. That's just the tip of the iceberg as far as the engagement of the stakeholders and those issues that we had to encounter. Incorporate more complete streets. iSwim, and I'm not going to go into too much on iSwim on either that or Envision because we got great speakers, and for the interest of time, I'm just going to move quickly through those. We also are now looking to more drainage and utility easements and trying to incorporate those into our projects. It's not a matter of just a complete street. It's a matter of every project that we do. The majority of our projects are not complete streets, but we got to incorporate sustainability in every part that we do. So it becomes more than a drawing or a task. It becomes ingrained in how we think and what we do. At the end, sustainability, I hope that I've sent the message, is not a one-size-fits-all interpretation or way of seeing things. It requires compromise and accommodation with many users. We've got to look at the varying maintenance issues associated with it. I'd like to call one of the considerations is a life cycle cost. We've always looked at a cost, and this is a paper that at one time or another I'll maybe present someplace, but it can't be just the cost of building the facilities, but we've got to look at it for the life of the facility, whether it be 20 years or whatever that is. What is it going to cost us to maintain that vegetation, those benches, those trash, the bioswales? I mean, those bioswales, let me give you a great example. Gabions. You're all familiar with gabions and drainage. When I started talking to our staff that maintains a lot of these creeks and drainages, they're looking at me and saying, why are you putting gabions? You know how, this is Rick, here is a lawnmower or something. Mow all the vegetation that's grown out there. And I'm just looking at it as, look how pretty it looks when it's just finished. But they're having to deal with, what I'm having to deal with much after. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm not telling you gabions are not a good idea, but we've got to look a little bit further than just the immediate drawing. We've got to look far beyond that life cycle. It's not just a fad to us. We've got to look into the foreseeable future. It's about environmental quality, development, economic development, quality of life. You know, it's not rocket science, but it's sure ain't easy.